It started with a letter slipped under my door. The paper was neatly folded, the HOA logo printed at the top in smug blue ink. "Dear Mr. Nolan," it began. "Your property is in violation of Section 12C of the Community Aesthetic Code. Please remove the overgrown oak trees in your front yard within 14 days. I stared at it for a long time. Those oaks had been there long before the HOA. Long before I even moved into Maple Ridge Estates. They weren't just trees, they were living monuments. Shading the house and keeping it cool every summer. I'd trimmed them regularly, kept the branches clear of the sidewalk. But apparently, according to our new HOA president, they obstruct the visual harmony of the neighborhood. The new president, Cheryl Benton, had only been in charge for 2 months. She was the kind of woman who carried a clipboard like it was a sword. Every weekend, she'd march up and down the cul-de-sac, jotting notes about people's lawns, mailboxes, and even the color of their mulch. She'd already fined the Andersons for leaving their trash bins out an hour too long. Now, it seemed, I was her next project. When I called her about the letter, she answered in that clipped, condescending tone of hers. "Mr. Nolan, your trees are unsightly and pose a risk to neighboring properties. It's a matter of community safety." "Safety?" I repeated. "Those trees are perfectly healthy." "I've already spoken to a landscaper," she interrupted. "He'll give you a fair rate if you act quickly." So that was it, she wasn't just enforcing rules. She was pushing her landscaper friend's business. I told her politely that I'd have my own arborist take a look before doing anything drastic. Her reply came sharp as broken glass: "If you don't comply, we'll proceed with formal action." That night, I stood under the oaks, their branches rustling in the warm breeze. I ran my hand over the bark of the largest one. The same tree my late wife and I had planted 20 years ago. Its roots were deep, its trunk solid. Removing it felt like tearing out a piece of my life. I decided then that I wasn't cutting them down without a fight. Cheryl could send as many letters as she wanted. Those trees weren't going anywhere. At least, that's what I thought. 2 weeks later, I found a bright orange notice taped to my mailbox. "Final warning, tree removal required immediately." It felt almost personal now. Like Cheryl enjoyed the power trip. I tried reasoning with her again at the next HOA meeting. "Cheryl," I said, keeping my voice calm, "the trees aren't a hazard. My arborist inspected them, perfectly healthy." She crossed her arms, lips pursed. "Healthy or not, they're in violation. And frankly, your resistance sets a bad example for the community." A few neighbors nodded, afraid to side against her. Others, like old Mrs. Conway, shot me sympathetic looks. Everyone knew Cheryl ruled by intimidation. I took a deep breath. "So what's the fine now?" $200 per week until removal." Gasps echoed through the room. That was absurd. "You can't do that," I protested. "It's in the bylaws," she said smugly. Page 43. I went home furious. I read those bylaws cover to cover that night. She was twisting the language. Of course. But she knew most people wouldn't challenge her. So I filed a formal appeal. The HOA board scheduled a hearing, though Cheryl chaired it herself. Conflict of interest much? The result was predictable: appeal denied. But I wasn't giving up. I hired an attorney, sent a cease and desist letter, and even contacted the county zoning office. They confirmed what I suspected. Cheryl had no authority to demand removal unless the trees were proven dangerous. When I delivered that letter to her doorstep, she barely glanced at it. "You're wasting your money," she said coldly. Nature has a way of taking care of things. Something about her tone chilled me. The next week, she hired a landscaping crew to trim the trees bordering her own property, right next to mine. I watched them hack away at her bushes, suspiciously close to my fence line. A day later, I noticed one of my oak's roots exposed, as if someone had tried to dig it up. That night, a storm rolled in, heavy wind, thunder, sheets of rain battering the neighborhood. I sat by the window, watching my oaks sway like giants in the gale. I prayed they'd hold strong. Around midnight, I heard a loud crack. The sound tore through the storm like a gunshot. I ran outside in the downpour, heart pounding. One of the trees leaned dangerously toward Cheryl's house. Its roots ripped halfway from the ground. And then, with a roar, it fell. The crash was deafening. When I reached the street, the sight froze me. My largest oak sprawled across Cheryl's roof, its massive trunk crushing her porch and upper windows. Rainwater poured through the gaping hole, soaking her furniture. Neighbors came running out, flashlights cutting through the storm. Cheryl stood in her doorway, drenched and trembling, screaming, "You did this. You refused to remove it." "I didn't make it rain, Cheryl," I shouted back. "You knew this storm was coming." The police arrived within minutes, followed by the fire department. They assessed the damage while I tried to explain the history of the tree dispute. The officer listened, jaw tight, clearly irritated at being dragged into an HOA feud. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving debris scattered everywhere. The oak lay like a fallen giant, its branches snapped. Its trunk splintered clean through Cheryl's roof. It was a mess, expensive, but thankfully no one was hurt. That afternoon, I received another letter, this time from Cheryl's lawyer. "You are hereby held responsible for all damages caused by your negligence." Negligence. The word stung. My arborist's report clearly stated the tree was healthy. If anything, Cheryl's tampering and that freak storm were to blame. I contacted my insurance company, and they sent an adjuster. He examined the scene carefully. "Looks like someone disturbed the root system recently," he said, pointing to the exposed soil. "See that? Could have weakened its base." I felt my stomach twist. "Are you saying someone caused this?" He shrugged. "Wouldn't be the first time someone tried to help nature along." I knew instantly who he meant. Cheryl. But accusing her without proof would just make me look vindictive. So I kept quiet, for now. Word spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. For once, people weren't whispering about me, they were whispering about her. "Did you hear? The president's roof got crushed by the very tree she wanted gone." A week later, the HOA called an emergency meeting. Cheryl appeared wearing a neck brace and an expression of pure fury. "This man's irresponsibility endangered our community," she spat. "He must be removed from the association." But this time, the room wasn't with her. People murmured about her aggressive enforcement, her harassment, her so-called safety claims. I said nothing. I didn't have to. The fallen oak spoke louder than any words could. For the first time in months, I felt the tide turning. The investigation took weeks. Insurance adjusters, arborists, and even a county inspector came through. One by one, their reports painted the same picture. The oak had been stable until someone disturbed its roots. When the county official presented his findings to the HOA board, Cheryl went pale. "Are you suggesting I sabotaged that tree?" she demanded. "No one's naming names," he replied coolly. "But evidence shows recent digging around the base from your side of the fence." A murmur rippled through the room. For the first time, Cheryl's authority cracked. Her carefully maintained poise faltered, her voice trembling as she tried to regain control. "This is absurd. He planted those trees to spite the HOA." I stood then, calm but firm. "That oak was planted before you ever moved here, Cheryl. My wife and I built memories under that shade. You wanted it gone because it didn't fit your perfect picture." The room went silent. Even her closest allies avoided her eyes. A week later, she resigned for personal reasons. The HOA quietly dropped all claims against me. And the insurance covered both the tree removal and the damages. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Her own greed and meddling had literally brought her house down. After the cleanup, I stood in my yard staring at the empty space where the oak had stood. Sunlight streamed through the gap, strange and raw. I missed its shade, its strength, the way it whispered in the wind. But in that loss, there was a strange peace. The other trees still stood, proud, defiant, untouched. The HOA board, now led by a kinder neighbor, officially ruled that mature, healthy trees could not be removed without independent inspection. My late wife would have loved that. One evening, as I watered the flowers beneath the surviving oaks, a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. I looked up and smiled. Maybe it was my imagination. But it felt like the trees were standing guard, stronger for what they'd endured. A few weeks later, a letter arrived from Cheryl's insurance company. Her claim had been denied. They found her own negligence contributed to the damage. She had to pay for her repairs out of pocket. I folded the letter, feeling no triumph, just closure. Sometimes, I thought, nature has its own sense of justice. You can't bully the roots of something that's grown with love and time. Because when you do, sooner or later, those roots remember.